Glad to have you aboard. It's our New Year's edition of the RP show. I should tell you the text line for Western Dodge is open 902-518-3033. Plenty to talk with celebrity sober coach Bob Merrier about. Bob, listen, I know you have your agenda. Can I just start with mine? The NHL announced this morning
Yeah.
Friday night's Winter Classic. Friday night's Winter Classic is sold out, 36,000 at Lone Depot Park here in Miami. Did you ever think they'd play a Winter Classic in South Florida?
No, I didn't. It's kind of weird because it's a giant baseball stadium with a roof on it. Curious to see how the ice holds up. But today it was cold enough in South Florida that it probably would have held. So there was that too this morning.
Zero Celsius this morning. I did not care for that. Okay. Your Montreal Canadiens last night gave the Florida Panthers a taste of their own medicine. The comeback Cats, man. Must have been fun for you to be in it. In attendance for that 3-2 Habs victory.
First of all, you're not going to throw me under the bus, Rod. I'm
Nope.
impressed because Rod sent me
Nope.
a text going, "Did you get up and leave at 1-0? Because there was 5 minutes left." I was still in the building, okay, just so you know. We just didn't make it back to our seat, but
Okay.
it was worth every penny, and it was like otherwise a game that like it was Murphy's law. As soon as I got up, I think I was responsible for the comeback at this point because the shame I had with you buzzing me was pretty good,
I would
and
never. You think I would
um,
throw you under the bus? You were prepared for it though, weren't you? You were prepared
I
for it.
wanted to be ahead of it, put it that way. There was no way I wasn't going to be
Okay.
today. So I was like, okay, I'll do what needs to be done here. I'll jump on the grenade for Rod before
Bob,
any other way.
I heard
Mm.
this morning the Montreal Canadiens associated with the S word, the Stanley Cup.
Well, I don't know if it's there yet, but for a Kings fan, we had God, every Canadian will tell you it didn't really count. It was the North. You guys made it out, made it a Stanley Cup, and that's the last time we spoke about them. But the reality was for Montreal to say we're going to tear it down, which they did. And who are you hiring? I mean, they brought in a really good guy in Gorton to run hockey, and he brought in a pick that everyone, who the hell's can't use? Wait a minute, you're hiring a pee-wee coach, this highest level of, and everyone sort of looked and went, okay. I think that
Martin
they will
St.
now
Louis.
be
Martin
looked
St.
at as
Louis.
they come in.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, but they looked at it. People were shaking their head all the while. I think the Habs faithful needed to see proof, and the proof started coming pretty quickly. And it's built like there's not a Canadians fan around that isn't thinking, man. And in my lifetime, I'm a 60-year-old man. It wasn't like maybe the late 70s had a team with this much prowess, like this much talent across the lines. And then Paul Maurice after the game last night said, Montreal's defense is going to be a problem moving forward. Nobody moves the puck faster than these guys. They're young. They're the youngest team in the NHL, and there are no big egos. Everyone's bought into the long contract, so life is good being a Montreal Canadiens fan right now.
No, I could
There's
tell it.
no
I could
core
tell.
four blowing it up.
Well, they said this was the lowest attended Montreal fan faithful in years. I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that. You go to the games when the Habs are here.
No,
If it was lower
no.
than normal, they were sure loud. You were sure loud last
Yep,
night, Bob.
it was. I know when we were leaving, you could hear the Olay in the parking lot. Then they were when we were leaving because people left on a high note, but again, they travel. I mean, I'll give props to Toronto. When Toronto plays in South Florida, there's a lot of Toronto fans too. There's no doubt about that. Even our post-apocalyptic president here that are making Canadians come here less. And I think for hockey, it transmits into that. There was plenty of French in the concession lines last night in South Florida, so it was nice to see. I'm impressed with you know how far that team has come. 3 Stanley Cup appearances, 2 wins back to back. The building is so much more. It's upgraded. They put on a good product. And I remember first coming to games here 10 years ago, and they would explain icing. That's no longer they've got a really good, and they deservedly have a great franchise, a model franchise. but their time is ticking, I think. And I don't want to say the S word. Not a chance am I going to say that today. But it's definitely for any Canadians fan. Like it's been a long time that we have this type of talent. Let's look at and what's coming. Like the David Reinbacher was a controversial fifth pick in 2023, and instead of going for a Mishkov, and then of course in 2024 we were able to get with the fifth pick, we were able to pick up Demidov. So like the team's stacked. There's a kid out west now. They've just signed Bryce Pickford, who's leading the WHL in scoring as a defenseman. So the rich are getting richer, and it's going to be good times. I think that would
Well,
be most Canadians fans are sitting there like a Cheshire cat. They're like, it's coming. We're going to be a
well,
wagon coming.
and
They
you
built
guys were
resilience
very
last night, Rod.
you were very patient through the rebuild. You were. And I said, I hope
Mm,
that Martin St. Louis survives to come out the other side. And he did, right? Because
right,
you guys believed in
right.
him. You could see that it was coming. But listen, you brought up the Leafs. It's like we're on the same mental telepathy here. I wanted to ask you about the Leafs. We have a lot of Leaf fans that watch this show. So can Bob Merrier give us his assessment of the Toronto Maple Leafs, please?
That they have two tiers of players, and it backfired on them. You remember when Marner got that contract before leaving, and it was like a negotiation. It was really protracted. It was ugly, and by all accounts now, it's plenty. You can read up about it. There were two camps. There was the superstars, and they had their own set of rules, and there was everyone else fighting over the biscuit. Like I think of what the Leafs would look like if they kept some of the players that they had to get rid of and all their picks. And any Canadian knows this. The Toronto media pumps up that team nonstop. It's disturbing. Kevin Bieksa, when the Canadians eliminated him during the COVID run, his face, they were like in a state of shock. How the hell did this just happen? The Canadians just eliminated the Leafs, and this is a nonstop theme for that team. And they believe every year they've got a chance, but now it's pretty obvious that the window is firmly closed. They put nails in the window; they're not opening it, and I think that's going to be tough for moving forward because like that Cheshire cat thing. Like the Canadians fan know it's coming. They know there's an inevitability. That was the sixth time in a row the Canadians beat Florida. Sixth game in a row in the last year and whatever. I don't know how many games, but 2 seasons, but they have 4 years. Last year they swept them. And it didn't stop them from being that way. But the Canadians are looking good. You have to admit. You have to admit.
Oh, I don't watch them like you do as much or as closely. But last night I was like, oh my God, this
Yeah.
Demidov is as advertised. And I'm like, if his
Yeah.
hands catch up to his feet, because he's so fast. And I've seen him make the moves in the
Right.
dazzling plays. He might go, he looks like one of the greatest Montreal Canadiens of all time in the making. Not joking.
Yep. Yeah. And he's got to allow him to make mistakes and still play him. Last night, the best player in December has been Slavkovsky, who is like he was like Bambi when he first came because he's a big kid, but he hadn't grown into that body. But now he had the best December of many Montreal Canadiens. Last night he makes a mistake that leads to them going to taking the lead in that goal, the power play goal, and the coach just puts him right back on. Whereas before he would have maybe, he would have lived, and this kid lives in his head because he's still a young man. But it's impressive to see how that coach is allowing them to make mistakes and earn it. But their resiliency, there's no quitting them. Like it's hard to sit here and like people are probably listening on the internet, they're listening to this going, oh, listen to this guy go on and on and on about the Canadians. Hey, for them to tear their team apart, go the long route and know it, like you have prolonged slumps that were happening and stuff like that. And last night's feel good story was that Montembeau, who hadn't had a start since December 2nd, plays a good game. Really good
Played a
game.
great game. Great game. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's funny, by the way, though. Sorry to interrupt you. Number one, congrats on talking about the Leafs and not swearing. That's impressive. I was ready for it.
Yes.
Number two, there are fan bases looking around like Buffalo and Columbus going, how did Montreal rebuild so fast? It didn't seem fast to you, Bob, but they were in the Stanley Cup final in 2021. and now they're back
Right.
as a playoff team and a contender. Like, and those
Right.
other teams are still lost in the wilderness.
Well, I think Buffalo fires Kevin Adams. Yeah, Yarmo Kigolana does nothing, and they have a 9-game heater going on right now. They didn't do anything, but them 14 years in the abyss. They haven't made the playoffs in 14 years, which is nuts. The Canadians last year, I mean, the last game of the season, it came down to, but at Christmas, they were in last place and they made it. So I think there was a lot to be done. And Nick Suzuki worked his way onto Team Canada's roster because he couldn't be denied. And I think people don't realize, like, he's the jackknife of hockey players. Nobody gives him any of his due as a good, but he did get it this morning on the Team Canada announcement. But how many kids can run? Doug Armstrong took a minute today to say, being a captain at a young age, being a captain in Montreal, like, this guy knows how to handle pressure, and he has done so with ease. So again, I think it's these just feel good stories are happening. They've got some pretty serious injuries, and they're still winning right now. So yeah, it would be nice. It would be
Hey,
nice moving
I do
forward.
I do want to spend a few minutes before I let you go talking about recovery. However, because you're in South Florida and I'm in South Florida, do you get tired of the Dolphins talk slash whining like I do? Speaking of teams lost in the wilderness.
Yeah. How does that coach keep his job? You know, and it's beyond me. And like, if you look at his arc, by the way, he's in long-term recovery, so I got to give him props.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
he his what he looked like he looked like the IT department guy wandered in. Hey, you're the new head coach. Hey, man, how's it going? But there's been too much drama around the team and bad injuries. Like, they've had, obviously, two has been problematic, and now he's not starting. It's hard to be a Dolphins fan. It really is, because you just think that they're turning the corner and everything falls apart. And usually with injuries, and then with the most gruesome injury of 2025 so far, by far, Tariq Hill, he's not back next year. There's going to be some wholesale changes there. It's hard to be a. I mean, I know what it's like to be a suffering fan, and like, I kind of got there by default. And I won't lie that when as soon as the Canadians are out of the playoffs, Florida's my team because I live here. Like, I have a home here. I like the Florida Panthers. When they play the Canadians, I don't, but every other time. And then, of course, the old anyone but the Leafs goes into play, just being that way. But going back to the answer of the NFL, it's they're nowhere near. I don't know what's going to happen. That I don't believe he keeps his job. Do you think he's being
No.
fired? For sure.
Yeah, he
Do you
has to
think they're
be.
going to
He
keep?
has to be. For whatever reason, there's a
No.
certain faction of the fans that want him to stay. I'm like, why? By the way, from the
No.
audience, Bob, I knew this would happen. Ryan in Saratoga, New York writes in. He says the Canadians have a look of a team that's going to be very good for the next 5 to 10 years. Rob's watching in Las Vegas. He says Taylor Elgersma is currently working out for the Dolphins. He is the young Canadian quarterback from Southern Ontario,
Yeah.
drafted by Winnipeg, tried out with the Packers. Jeff in Toronto writes in. He says, "Ha ha, the Dolphins have not won a playoff game since we were worried about turning off our computers because of the 2K virus." Oh my God, they were talking about that this
Yeah.
morning. Y2K, remember that? But hey, we only
Of
got
course, I
five
remember
minutes
that.
left, and I know how you can get rolling. So, don't you have a sober birthday coming up here?
Yeah, if I can hang on for 3 days, I'll have 22 years, which, um, yeah, it's kind of strange. I was asked that question the other day, and I was like, 22 years ago, I was circling the drain so hard, and the road I've taken into my recovery on a personal level and then professionally. And 2025 was a hard year. It was a hard year. The CBC did a lovely hit piece on me on the Fifth Estate. Which is now, like, I'm completely lawyered up, and I'm certainly not running from it. But it changed my whole view of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, because the lies that were put on there and the way it was edited was nuts. Um, but my 22 years, I've learned to react a little better to adversity, and I've learned to deal with adversity when I didn't have it for years. And recovery is possible. I remember being in treatment, thinking, like, every one of these people was lying. Nobody can quit drinking. It's impossible. The identity or loss of identity of who would I be without alcohol. turns out I was going to be just fine, but there were some scary moments. But now it's insane to me that it's 22 years later. It's crazy that I've been
Congratulations.
able to come through that. Yeah, well, it is literally one day at a time. But um, the alternative is death. When people say, "Oh, good for you," I was going to die. I had two doors: death or maybe
We're
prison. And then, but in prison, I would have died. So it was death or living a life. And I really want to, like, it's the holiday time, the busiest time of year for anyone that works in my business as an interventionist. And having this is the a dog isn't just for
Super
Christmas,
Bowl.
and neither is sobriety. But most people, like, I know a lot of birthdays are in January for the recovered people, but traditionally by 2 weeks into January my phone will not stop ringing for a month. It'll just be nonstop because people are
It's a
having their
Super
last
Bowl.
days of disco as we speak. It is. And then
Yeah.
I'm busy, and usually by mid-month of February, I need to take a protracted vacation again because I'm spent. But that's not going to change. The world is getting very different. People don't know how to deal with it. We're fractured as a populace, I find, and people either get recovered and have connection, and or they're by themselves and solitary, and that's where I ended up. I'd been alone for years, so I didn't want anyone to see me in the state I was in. But you could see the problem from space, as I always say. So, yeah.
Jeff in Toronto writes in. He says, "Congrats." Ken in Mississauga writes in. He says, "I was wondering about what Bob thought about that Fifth Estate piece. This does not seem like the same person." Well, I must be living under a rock. I
No.
didn't even know about it, but you brought it up, so I don't even
Well, it
know.
was
I don't
pretty
even
big
know.
news. I'm not scared of it, but legally, I'm not allowed to say much other than the fact that they flat out presented lies about me. They had a supposed client that was being portrayed by an actor, and everything that came out of his mouth was a lie. We had a full, like, an audit internally in my business with the legal team stating he stated like 85,000. I've never charged that number in my life. And that was the first thing that came out of his mouth. And I was like, that's interesting. And they had me as an adult, a bigger story that people die in rehab, and somehow I was responsible for a place that I've done quite a bit of business with, and then have to explain to them that I've never taken a dime from a treatment center in my life. And it's an unfortunate accident of a client who was not mine that passed while in there. This guy, again, had stuck drugs in after he'd been intaked, and it was a very unfortunate situation. But I had clients in the treatment center, and I'd done an intervention out west, and I was bringing someone else there. And of course, I spoke to my clients. Not one of my clients says, "I don't feel, get me out of here." They were all fine. But they didn't explain that to anyone. I explained the story on CBC. That's not good enough. And the guy that did the just slob to Sousa's, the reporter, and I'm suing them individually. So the producers, have a Merry Christmas. I'm coming.
They're gonna knock
But
us. They're gonna knock us off the air, Bob. We'll have to pick this up.
okay.
Okay, we'll have to pick this up again. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Happy New
Have a
Year,
great,
man.
have a
One day at
happy
a
New Year,
time.
everyone. Talk later.
All
Bye,
right.
man.
Boy, did we opened a
Okay.
Pandora's box there. Celebrity sober coach Bob Merrier joining us here from South Florida. We'll be right back with a sports update and more. Right back after this on the RP Show.